Hi there, my name is Dan, and welcome back to All One, the United Anatomy of Being. This is episode 8, called The Interaction of the Levels of Being. So before demonstrating some specific truths of the universe, let's revisit our 4 levels of being and demonstrate how these various levels interact, affect each other, and are real, whether or not we have consciousness or awareness of them at all. It has been briefly demonstrated that the development of the human mind has highly affected and changed our physical development, our physical existence, and our overall experience as both individuals and a species. It's not that difficult to recognize that the development and the capacity for thought has had an immense effect on our knowledge of the physical world, and thus an immense effect on that physical level existence and experience. We started from the earliest days of our species roaming the earth, searching for food, looking for shelter and safety, reproducing, and simply just trying to survive. With the early development of the mind, we began to use tools and improve our capabilities to eat, protect ourselves, and survive. With slowly but continuously progressing development of the mind and accumulated knowledge, we discovered and developed agriculture, the domestication of animals, the ability to build our own shelters, and for the first time, exist in a sedentary lifestyle. From there, development of the mind began to highly accelerate, enabling many pre-modern advancements that forever changed the human existence and experience, and also undeniably set the human species apart from any other. And then leaping ahead a few hundred, or actually a few thousand years, the further acceleration of the development of the mind led to this contemporary existence with all of our incredible technologies, advancements, and of course, new problems. As already mentioned, there are energies in between the non-physical and physical levels. And energy is required for anything to exist or anything physical to be. Energy is also required for action. And the mind and heart levels are energy levels. Thought dominantly drives and directs action, and the mind level, therefore, dominantly drives and directs the physical level. But it may be more challenging to recognize that there is something else at a higher level driving thought, or directly driving action in the absence of thought. And that something else is the heart level, or feeling. Can you doubt that you think differently when you are happy than when you are angry? You also act differently when you are happy than when you are angry because of the difference in your thinking. Or if you have ever been depressed or experienced others who have, you will have experienced how those feelings affect the mind and can then often even lead to the inability for any action at all. Feeling drives and directs thought, which in turn drives and directs action, meaning the heart level directs and drives the mind level, which then directs and drives the body or the physical level. Ultimately, how one acts or responds in any circumstance is driven much more deeply by how we feel than how we think, even though we may not be conscious that it's happening. Even the choices in our life, which we think are driven by thought, are more deeply driven by feeling first. So Copernicus was referenced a few episodes ago as an example of thought driving action towards the discovery of an important truth of the physical level that very much changed the human world. But it wasn't just thought that drove his actions of work and observation. On a deeper or higher level, there was a feeling that there was something new to find or something new to know. Even if he had just stumbled upon his discovery, he was still thinking and acting throughout his life toward an understanding of mathematics and the celestial bodies in the sky. His thoughts and actions were ultimately driven by a feeling, and maybe no one knows exactly what that feeling was, but maybe it was a feeling of wonder and interest in science, or a feeling of wonder and awe looking up at the night sky, or just a simple feeling that this is where he should direct and devote his life energy. Ultimately, whether we are aware of not or not, feeling is driven by the soul and the level of consciousness of our highest yet simplest level of being. We all have some awareness, be it conscious, subconscious, or unconscious, that we are. We exist and life is. Regardless of how we feel about it, even if we are not conscious of it, we seem to realize that we must do something. We must act. We must act if anything at all is to happen on the physical level. If we don't do something, we will not continue to be, at least not for very long on this physical level. But again, what we do is affected by how we think, which is affected by how we feel, and ultimately, how we feel on an even higher level about being and the source of being. This will be discussed in more detail later, and it was briefly introduced in the introduction. But there's really two fundamental heart-level feelings that we have about being, which are connection or disconnection to the source of being, which really manifest themselves as love or fear. And again, this will be discussed in much more detail in the third part of this series. But if we begin to feel that there is something more on this physical level existence and begin to feel that we are a part of it, or even begin to feel that we are it, which we are, then progressively and rather swiftly, there becomes nothing to ever fear, and all negative emotions, thoughts, and actions dissipate, which is pretty cool. And none of this would matter at all, or rather, nothing would ever matter at all if we did not have the capacity for consciousness. If we didn't have consciousness, we would exist as passively as a blade of grass. To help explain this, while energy has its own source and therefore cannot be the ultimate or highest source of everything that physically exists, energy is the next or secondary source of all that physically exists. And again, this will be explained in further detail. But nothing physical can exist without energy. Nothing physical can have movement or motion without energy. And if all the energy in the universe could instantly be switched off, the entire physical universe and everything in it would instantly cease to be. Energy is a requirement, and the two most fundamental energy categories, uniting and separating, are constantly interacting to enable anything that physically exists to exist physically. Most things in physical existence don't have the individual consciousness capability to perceive these energies. But the energies that enable them to exist or move or grow or change or do anything at all still exist. If there is no consciousness or awareness of these energies, it's really the same as not knowing or feeling that they exist, which is essentially the same as them not existing at all for that being. And without awareness or feeling that they exist, meaning they essentially don't exist, there can be no opportunity to have a direct effect on those energies. There can be no opportunity to play an active role in the outcomes of your life. And then existence can only be passive. As a simple example, if you had no ability to perceive anything physical around you, you would have no consciousness or awareness of anything physical around you. What this means is that whether or not there are actually physical things around you would not matter to you because you have no awareness of them. They are completely irrelevant to you. To you, they do not exist. But as soon as you can perceive the physical level and thus gain awareness of the things around you, those things do become relevant. And you can have an impact. You can look down and have an effect on that physical world, for example, by kicking a pebble to move it. You can perceive a rose, wonder at or enjoy its beauty, and even affect or prevent someone who is walking along, picking or stomping on all the nearby roses. So we do have the perceptional tools on all of our levels, and therefore have the potential for consciousness on all of our levels. We could perceive the physical level through our 5 senses and thus gain consciousness of the physical level. We can perceive and have awareness that we think. We can perceive how we differentiate all that we perceive to exist and thus gain consciousness of the mind level or the separating energies that are currently dominant on the physical level. We can perceive that we feel and perceive connection to some things like a mate or our families or our friends, and can thus gain some consciousness of the heart level and the uniting energies that will be, but are not yet dominant on the physical level. Finally, we do have the perceptional tools to perceive the ultimate singularity of pure being and the ultimate oneness of everything. Our perceptional tools of the physical and mind levels are well developed. So we have the greatest consciousness on those levels and thus have the greatest ability to affect them. If they're all that we perceive and are conscious of, then essentially they are all that exist for us and are therefore the most important to us. But still, not having an activated perception of something and therefore having no consciousness of it does not mean that it does not exist, just as a rose could exist even if we could not perceive it. So while there is a hierarchy to our 4 levels, with each higher level being more subtle or less obvious, or more difficult to perceive than the previous, they're all extremely connected and inform each other. For example, thoughts drive and direct action while feelings drive and direct thought. But in the absence of thought or a developed mind, feeling will most dominantly direct and drive action. Let's think of an infant. An infant whose mind and perception of the physical world is completely undeveloped. They still feel without needing to learn how, and they still feel their physical needs without having to think about them. They will express themselves not through reason or thoughts or words, but through emotion. And even though the mind is undeveloped yet, and pure feeling will dominate their actions for quite some time, they're already learning responses to their emotions and actions all the time. And it doesn't take long for an infant to realize or learn that even if their belly is full, their diaper and clothes are dry, their body is warm and comfortable, and they are essentially without any physical need, the mother will still come when they cry. Additionally, action can affect both our thoughts and our feelings, while thoughts in and of themselves can affect our feelings. Go for a walk or a run if the mind is thinking negatively or your heart is feeling depressed. Your thoughts will change and so will your feelings. Feed an empty belly. Heal a physical ailment. Rest a weary body, and both thoughts and feelings will improve. Similarly, consciously change your thoughts and your feelings will change. You can think your way to complete sadness and depression, even if the thoughts are not aligned with reality and you're making up stories that are not true about the circumstances of your life. And you can also, alternatively, change tears from the loss of a loved one into smiles or even laughter, simply by remembering the good times. So this will be further explained, but to summarize, the 4 levels of existence exist regardless of whether there is perception or consciousness of them or not. They exist in a hierarchy from the source of the uniting and from the source to the uniting and separating energies to the physicalness of the universe. We and everything in the physical universe exists on these levels simultaneously. But most physical things in the universe do not have the perceptional tools for awareness of them, or at least not all of them. Humans do have the tools to perceive all these levels, even though we are generally most conscious of only our physical and mental levels, with some consciousness of our heart level. However, the perceptional tools are different for each level, and the tools of a lower level cannot perceive a higher level until it is at least first perceived on that higher level. And as each level directs and informs the lower, there is immense potential power in gaining full consciousness of the whole of our being. And what this ultimately means is that by gaining consciousness of our whole being, we will have more truths available to us, and we will have better direction for our feelings, our thoughts, and our actions, which will highly increase our probabilities for even more successful feelings, thoughts, actions, and experiences. This is similar to, but even more powerful than, the increased success humans experienced on the physical level by activating and developing the mind and consciousness of thought long ago. Thank you very much. In the next episode, we will be discussing some important truths of the universe or the physical level, starting with constant change or impermanence. So thank you very much for joining me, and I look forward to seeing you in the next episode.